Hello, my name is Yan Fong Ling. I'm an artist based in Sheffield, and I'm also a senior lecturer in fine art and also early career research fellow at Sheffield Hallam University. I'd like to thank Ken and the team at the Outing the Past conference for this opportunity to present today. My paper is called Towards Memorial, Exploring Edward Carpenter's LGBTQ Legacy through the remaking, gifting and wearing of a pair of sandals and socks. And it's an evolving narrative that reflects the recent work that I've been making and also some of the changes since COVID and finding new relevances in the artwork that I've been making. So I'll share my screen and begin the presentation. So what do you stand for? Or more importantly, when and where? While we've been socially distancing at home, our empty streets and public spaces have become a political site of contestation. The right to protest publicly and questions about what public monuments and memorials represent our history have been triggered by global events, highlighting the inequalities in today's society as a result of our colonial past. This presentation explores how do we tell our histories whilst creating a culture of change and finding the practical steps to move forward. And what part are we the monument to this moment? I'm an artist, and my art practice uses performance and participatory-based methods of social engagement to explore how the intersections of my race, gender, class, and sexuality align with historical figures to bridge a conjunctive gap between the past, how these ideas are held in the present, and how they are developed with others in the future. This presentation is based on my current artistic practice as it has evolved over the period before and during the pandemic, and uses examples of recent projects towards Memorial and other artworks to find connections with the overlooked histories of people, objects, and places, reflecting my own biographical storytelling and sense of self. Before outlining my project, I want to position a number of key ideas that underpin the current practice research. In the essays, The Plates of the Encyclopedia by Roland Barthes, he suggests that the Flaubert diagrams showing the casting process of statues of Louis XIV are a subversion of their authority, a violent demystification from warrior to monstrous doll. And in exposing and revealing the art production process, we slice and dice through the myth of power, authority, institutions, and their hold over us. Considering this, a recurring motif in my practice explores what happens when you expose or reveal the art production process, finding new connections in the act of construction and making, as a counterpoint to conversations about undoing and dismantling the representation of our own colonial histories, bodies, and their relationship to others in authority and public space. Secondly, in Alois Riegel's 1903 essay, The Modern Cult of Monuments, Its Essence and Development, he sets out a series of aesthetic values that have perpetuated the development of the ideological interest in monuments in public and civic spaces. They include age value, a monument's natural aging process, historical value in preserving a document for future importance, use value, its intended function and its maintenance, and newness value, championing modernity, process, and the human spirit. The most significant to this presentation is the term a deliberate commemorative value, where he states is keeping a monument from becoming history to keep it perpetually alive and present in the consciousness of our future generations. I take from this deliberate commemorative value how monuments and memorials are engaged with, actively peopled and embodied, from an annual gathering seen here to a personal daily routine, or more provocatively, a public demonstration a protest, and even a riot. Thirdly, a term coined by artist Alexandro Sigard in his 2013 essay and website posts on queer reenactment, in which their artworks allow the artist to reenact, restage, relive the childhood references of their and his brother's 1980s upbringing, reconfiguring the escapism and spectacle of late night TV movies and role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons to assert a queer vision of the future. This speculative and playful reimagining of existing forms of cultural output resonates for me, based on my own literature of my own teenage coming out, Edward Carpenter, now found in the archives, and how I use this as the basis to model myself for the future. In the project Towards Memorial, I explored the making, gifting and wearing of sandals designed and handmade by gay socialist activist Edward Carpenter, who lived and worked in Millthorpe, Derbyshire and Sheffield, seen here in the middle. Born in 1844 and died in 1929, during his lifetime, Carpenter sought to improve the living and working conditions of the working classes. This included a greater awareness of and openness to our physical and spiritual relationship to others and the natural environment. Carpenter also supported equal rights for women and championed new ways of defining homosexual and queer relationships and identities at a time when homosexuality was legal, whilst living openly with his lifelong partner, George Merrill, seen here cross-legged. The project began in Sheffield City Archives on discovering examples of Carpenter's collection, sandal collection as reference, alongside a small newspaper advert, paper foot patterns from his customers, and photographs of Carpenter wearing the sandals, and one paper pattern which was inscribed with the words Self 1892, pertaining to Carpenter himself. And like an open source, the archive materials compelled me to want to experience them firsthand by remaking the sandals and going for a walk in them. Remaking the sandal was a way of interpreting the archive material and translating these sources into a contemporary design using modern materials. And I worked collaboratively with ethical shoemakers, Noble and Wiley, who were formerly Guat Shoes, established in Sheffield in 1978. Each pair of sandals were handmade and stamped on each inner sole with the words Self 1892, as well as 1844 and 1929 to commemorate Carpenter's year of birth and death. And here are the final shoes. The sandals were initially gifted to the Friends of Edward Carpenter, a group of enthusiasts and activists in their own right, who aimed to commission a permanent public memorial to Carpenter in Sheffield city centre. And this is where the project began to gain critical momentum. Can a pair of sandals be a form of public memorial when they are worn? Here, Carpenter's biography and ideologies align with those activists who continue his legacy today, and the project recognized their contribution to the fight against injustice and oppression of others, including LGBT sexual health, Augury Trees for Justice, and Save Sheffield Trees campaign. The image sparked discussion and debate around what a monument or memorial could be, and the hidden biases in the commissioning process of public artworks. And through a series of films made collaboratively with Picture Story Productions, we documented the remaking, the gifting, and wearing of the sandals by activists, commemoration by walking, and developing a visual and interview-based narrative that links the archival objects to how Carpenter's legacy is enlivened through participants now. In the final moments of one of the 3 films documenting the wearing, the Friends of Edward Carpenter in the Carpenter sandals are seen walking the potential sites of their permanent public memorial in Sheffield city centre. And at one site, they congregate for a group photograph taken by myself, and in that brief moment, they have become the monument towards my memorial process. Towards Memorial, both in the production of the sandals and their documentation, points to the demonumentalizing of the monument, dismantling the authority and mythology of their status, and highlight how these politically constructed and soon forgotten histories of statuary shift to how we, in our multiplicity, make history in the present and the decentering of the monument practice. Other artists' examples include Jeremy Deller, We're Here Because We're Here, where actors dressed as soldiers in uniform to disrupt people's everyday encounters, to commemorate the anniversary of the Battle of Somme. And he was also renowned for his contemporary reenactment of the Battle of Orgreave, using miners and their families to retell and relive their experiences. We also have Anthony Gormley's One Another, which invited hundreds of members of the public to occupy the space of the fourth plinth in Trafalgar Square for an hour each. Here, performers and non-performers are bodies that reenact and replace the fixity of statuary. Furthermore, in Paul Harfleet's Pansy Project, Paul plants pansies in the places where people have experienced homophobic abuse. Here, the artist can be seen lying in a street in Paris while documenting the pansy he planted on behalf of a participant. In Ryan Lettner's Strange Inheritance, Ryan physically cleans and ritually cares for existing public memorials to the AIDS crisis in the US. In these examples, the artist's queer body simultaneously reenacts in deliberate commemoration and subsequently embodies and enables other participants their own commemoration. They monumentalize the deliberate commemorative value as temporary performance. The artist becomes activist, captured only by these momentary photographic documents in a queering of public space. Fast forward to the summer of 2020, I was watching over and over the footage of Black Lives Matter protesters tearing down the Colston statue in Bristol. Some were pulling the rope noosed around the statue, some chanting and encouraging the act, the majority recording the event on their phones. When the statue fell, some seized onto the fallen monument, and one activist jubilantly jumped onto the empty plinth. In the aftermath of the statue's removal, led the artist Mark Quinn to temporarily occupy the space of the empty plinth with a statue of the activist Jen Reed, a black body co-opted by an established white male artist in a gesture that demonstrated his privilege. And the subsequent protection of statues and monuments linked to Britain's colonial past, boarded up, created new temporary monolith structures to protect the monument, surrounded by protesters in their own placards in protest. These public protests and demonstrations by activists calling for the removal of public statues prompted me to rethink the alternative ways of memorial making, looking at the intimate, interpersonal gestures of social art practice and the potential of collaboration, co-design, and community participation that I had developed. This was driven by wanting to wrestle the conversation away from the culture wars debate and party politics, and to actively bring other artistic perspectives into the discussion. For me, artists are at the center of this process as the makers of these contested artworks and experiences in public space, and the power in art objects themselves as they become the focal point to where many public protests congregate. I posit a solution to the debate around our public memorials to Britain's colonial and omitted queer history requires a shift between the perceived fixity of monuments, to the fleeting temporality of moments. In conclusion to this ongoing research, I've developed new work that opens up other in-depth questions and possibilities. In a newly commissioned artwork for the exhibition at Bury Art Museum and Sculpture Centre, Monumentaries is a series of 16 postcards that develops a visual narrative using archives from Towards Memorial, we've selected artworks and objects from Sheffield City Archives and Bury Art Museum's permanent art collection and social history archives, exploring feet, sandals, shoemaking, protest, public statuary, monuments and memorial. The postcards are designed to be worn in participants' shoes, using a step-by-step guide to engage the public with the artwork. The original idea came about at the very beginning of the Towards Memorial project, as I had no prior skills or experience of sandal making. So I stuffed postcards with the image of Carpenter into my trainers and wore them. And like a stone in your shoe, you feel every bit of the postcard at first, but with time they soften and wear, sculpting around your feet while you went around your daily routine. And every so often, I would be reminded that I had Carpenter in my trainers. When I took the postcards out after a few months, I was confronted with both image and object, both an image of myself and Carpenter simultaneously. My persistent impression of my feet onto the surface of the postcard had begun to erase the image. And in doing so, the form, shape, and character of my feet emerged. I began to find new equivalences between the act of staring and wearing, once predicated what my eyes saw, were now activating a knowledge of material and experience through my neglected feet. A connection Carpenter had wished for through the production of his sandals, an emancipation of the feet from the coffin of clothes and the boot, and a connection to nature that would open new thinking, alternative concepts of spirituality, and ultimately new relationships with each other. In monumentaries, the artwork purposefully engages participants into this process of re-evaluation between themselves and the images on the postcards. Caught between the postcard images' momentary temporality, a type of monumentary is brought about in the postcard's emerging objectness. In the access between these trajectories, the artwork questions, are we wearing out our histories, like to take them out on a daily routine, or are we wearing out our histories, erasing them as our self emerges through and beyond them? The artworks presented today can be seen alongside others at Bury Art Museum and Sculpture Centre from the 16th of October 2021 to January 22nd, 2022. And the exhibition will present a new Towards Memorial film chapter, having gifted sandals to LGBTQ+ staff at Bury Council and its youth group Proud of Gayness during this summer, telling their experiences of establishing Bury's Rainbow Walks and now Bury Pride. And the second part of the exhibition is a curation of a visual narrative using the permanent art collections and social archives, using the artwork monumentaries as the basis of the exhibition, alongside the public's engagement, wearing the postcards in their own shoes to juxtapose our relationship with archives, objects, and their histories. And finally, here are the links to the Towards Memorial films, and these will be posted in the chat to view in your own time. There is a free channel film on Vimeo, and also a selection of shorter interview-based films found on the Sheffield City Archives YouTube channel, and also my website, yanfengling.com, for all information about the projects. Thank you very much.